All right, welcome everybody. It looks like we're still having some folks join us, but we'll go ahead and get started with our introduction so that we can be cognizant of your time this afternoon. So we are really happy to have you joining us today for this presentation. We had close to 100 people who have registered for this, so I would say we are really pleasantly surprised with the interest in this topic and hope that you leave today really learning something new and something that you can use in your either personal or professional life. We have a good mix of individuals attending us today. So we have some people here who are professional caregivers who work in a variety of different industries, some who work in law enforcement, some who work in senior care, some who work in adult protective services. Oh, sorry, everybody. I got kicked off there for a second. Not sure what happened, but I apologize. So we have a good mix of individuals who are joining us today, both personal and professional. So we're really happy to have everyone here and hope that you're able to learn something that you're able to use in your life that you can take away from this. So I want to thank the Wolf River Dementia Network and the Forget Me Not Fund for being willing to co-host this event and help us spread the word and offer this to our local communities. So I counted the other day, and I think we had 30 counties in Wisconsin represented by attendees in this group. So we have a good mix of people across the state who are joining us, so welcome. I will now go ahead and introduce you to our speaker, which hopefully you are familiar with if you registered for this. Our speaker is Sergeant Carrie Peters, and Kerry is a member of the Appleton Police Department. So she'll be presenting, as you can see, on law enforcement response to dementia, and she'll talk about some common calls or situations that officers sometimes respond to, and some safety practices and resources that are available, and then information on when and how to report elder abuse, as we know that that can become an important topic along the dementia journey for some individuals. I also want to share Kerry is the recipient of the Alzheimer's Association 2020 Professional Caregiver of the Year Award, which she does not yet have the physical award because we had to cancel our in-person conference this year. But that award is given to honor her commitment to professionally serving folks who have dementia, as well as her work in educating her peers and educating the community like today about the disease. So please join me in welcoming Kerry. I will turn it over to her.
All right, thank you, Kate. I'm really glad to be here today. And I too wanted to start off, hold on one second, there we go. Start off with a thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. And so I just want to start off by thanking the Alzheimer's Association and the other groups that Kate already mentioned for allowing me to do this webinar today. I'm glad, you know, we still have ways with COVID restrictions to reach people out there. So the overview that Kate kind of said, today I'm going to talk about common calls we as law enforcement respond to involving people living with dementia. I'm going to go over some safety practices that can be used in the home to keep your loved ones or clients safe. I'm going to go over elder abuse, the different types briefly, as well as when and how to report elder abuse, and then go over some local resources that are kind of, I guess, geared towards the Fox Valley. I know that Kate said there's a greater area covered in this webinar, but there will be some local Fox Valley resources covered. So to start with, I'll go over, I guess, some of my background so that way you can learn a little bit more about me and why I would be doing a training involving dementia. So my educational background is that I studied human services and social work and got my degree in that. And I studied at UW-Milwaukee and UW-Oshkosh. I also, in the last couple of years, got a dementia specialist certification through the cadet program at UW-Oshkosh. and also through that same program, receive certifications to train 2 courses related to dementia, and those are Dementia Generalist for community members and Challenging Behavioral Specialist. So I can be asked by anyone to present those trainings to any group. My career at APD started back in January of 2008 when I was hired. I've been in patrol my entire career with APD, but along with that, I've been able to do additional training and pick up other skills and certifications here within the police department. I'm CIT trained, which is crisis intervention training. Most officers at APD have this training. I'm also one of our bike officers. I'm part of our GST, which is gang suppression team. I'm also a board member on our APBA, which is our benevolent association. I serve as the secretary, and our benevolent association helps fund youth sports programs and do things with the community, as well as help our members if they're going through any family hardships. I'm an ID tech with the department, which means that I can do basic crime scene investigation stuff. I'm part of our honor guard, which serves at events like parades, trainings, and funerals. I'm our agency refugee liaison, our Kiwanis liaison, and I'm a trainer for the Abuse in Later Life grant that Outagamie County received. So we're currently, it's a training team consisting of victim services, prosecutor, and human services team. And we are currently training law enforcement about how to investigate elder abuse. Personally, when I'm not doing police stuff, I really enjoy sports and music. I retain a lot of useless information in both, and I really enjoy going to concerts. So I can't wait until those start back up. Right before COVID hit, I had tickets to go see Hall & Oates, Earth, Wind & Fire in Santana. So I'm hoping they're still touring when COVID ends. Additionally, I've been married for just about 15 years. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and my personal connection to dementia is that I lost my father-in-law in 2019 from a 12+ year battle with Alzheimer's. So all of you, like Kate said, have different connections to dementia, and that's why you're here today. You want to learn more about it. Perhaps you have a family member or a friend who's living with dementia. Maybe you are a family caregiver. Maybe you're a professional caregiver. Maybe you're living with dementia yourself. Whatever the reason, I'm glad everyone's here today because we know the importance of sharing and learning information on this topic. So now we're going to start with the common calls that police officers respond to. And at any point, if anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute or type questions to Kate, and she can relay them to me throughout the presentation. I know it'd be hard to hold them till the end. So please feel free to interject at any time, and I'd be happy to try to answer your questions. So with some of the common calls we respond to include perhaps someone living with dementia being a victim of a crime, being involved in different driving situations, becoming combative, having hallucinations or delusions, wandering, having welfare checks done on them for various reasons, being involved in theft or lewd behavior. And so some of the things police really need to focus on in handling a call involving someone living with dementia are these 3 things: really doing a good assessment with that person, having a good conversation, and assessing their cognition and extent of memory loss, trying to verify if they have personal support to help them in their situation, and verify if they need to be linked to resources in the community. These are 3 points that I'm really trying to stress in law enforcement training that I'm currently creating, and I'm fortunate enough to be creating with Fox Valley Memory Project and the ADRC, Mike Rohrcast and Kerry Usselman. So we're creating that training for law enforcement right now, and these are 3 of the things we really try to hammer home to officers to do. So First, we'll talk about being victim of a crime. As you can imagine, someone living with dementia is at higher risk of victimization due to their more vulnerable status. And so any one of us could be victimized at any time. Crime happens and incidents happen, but obviously those living with dementia are more at risk. So it could be something like a theft or something like that. And these situations could occur right within their home. It could occur at a facility. It could occur out in the community. And when we, as officers, get those calls, we're obviously going to go there and investigate. And it's important for us, to investigate directly with the victim, see what we can gather from that person, how much they're able to retain and communicate about what happened. And then, make that assessment of where they're at with cognition and memory. And then look to potentially family or caregivers that might be involved in their life to help in the situation and fill in gaps. A specific example of a situation where this collaboration was very helpful and helped the victim of a crime is that a couple years ago, I handled a theft and fraud involving a professional in-home caregiver. And the woman that was victimized was living alone in her own home and had mild dementia. But she received caregiver services in home to kind of help clean up, do light cooking duties, and to do grocery and other shopping. And what happened was her son was assisting her in managing her finances. And when he was checking over her bank records, he noticed that there were ATM withdrawals, which is something that he, was not common for his mother. She didn't make ATM withdrawals. If she had to withdraw any amount of cash, she would go to the bank with him and do so. So this was very odd, and it sparked questions in him. And ultimately, he ended up talking to the caregiver and also the company that provided the caregiver. Ultimately, he ended up coming to police because of this, because the answers that she gave included her saying that his mother had asked her to make a withdrawal to make a donation to a charitable organization or something like that. Ultimately, I was able to have the son get the different bank records. I had a good interview with the victim herself. She was able to verify to me that she did not make ATM transactions. That wasn't common in her financial practices. She also did not give anyone permission to make an ATM withdrawal or request that a donation be made to any organization. So after I gathered all of this information, including the financial documents, I went to interview the caregiver, and eventually she admitted to the ATM withdrawals. And additionally, she admitted to purchasing personal items when going to the grocery store or Walmart. So there was more that was uncovered that wouldn't have been necessarily noticed simply by the bank statements. So in this case, it was a really good collaboration with the son and the victim to work together to solve this situation and get this situation taken care of. Next, we will talk about driving situations. Obviously, there's a concern if someone is living with dementia, when is the right time to stop driving? That's a good question a lot of people ask, perhaps even when you don't have dementia. But there are people on the road with dementia driving, and, we have interactions with them during crashes, standard traffic stops for driving violations, or situations where perhaps they've become lost or disoriented, and maybe even in a silver alert type situation. So what we're going to see next is a video that is an actor, but then some real officers showing a traffic stop situation. And I think it really covers what a driving interaction could look like involving someone with dementia. So I'm just going to pull that up. And it's about 4 minutes long, so it is a little lengthy.
It's the best seafood restaurant in town, and it's cheap.
You're taking me someplace cheap?
No, I'm taking you someplace good. Hey, watch it! You blind?
Gonna be late. Where is it?
Sir, do you know you ran a red light back here?
I'm looking for my sister's house.
Sir, you ran a red light and you almost hit 2 people back here. I need to see your license and registration.
I don't have time for this. I'm gonna be late.
Sir, I need to see your license and registration, please.
My sister, she's expecting me. She lives on Forest Hill.
That guy almost killed me.
Sir, I need you to step back. Sir, you're going the wrong way. Forest Hills is back this way.
No, it's right where it's always been, right down there.
Sir, why don't you shut your car off and step back here and speak to me? Sir? Sir, I need you to shut your car off and come back here and talk to me. Okay, sir. You come right back here. Right in the back here. Okay. You have your license with you? Are you Calvin Sands?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sands, can you tell me again where you were trying to go?
To lunch at Karen's.
Who's Karen? Is she a relative of yours?
Yes, sir, my sister.
Okay. Can you tell me what today's date is?
What?
Can you tell me what today's date is?
With any traffic stop, when you're asking the occupant and the driver questions, you can tell if something's not right.
So it's through our questioning that we have to determine if it's a medical problem, a mental problem, if they're impaired for any number of reasons.
If you think the person that you stop may possibly have Alzheimer's or dementia, you want to ask simple questions such as, do they know the date? Do they know the time?
Can you tell me the day of the week?
He's drunk.
Sir, I asked you to step back.
That man does not need to be behind the wheel of a car.
Let's go, Todd.
He's a menace.
I'm not going to tell you again. You need to step back.
I can't find my sister's house.
Do you know your sister's phone number? Maybe we can give her a call.
Once they've determined that they've been stopped, they'll just start giving you the same answer. You explain to them the reason why you're stopping them, but they just keep telling you the same thing, such as, I'm trying to go to my daughter's house.
You know her address?
What do you have there, a locator device? Just give me a second, all right? Item 14 from Basin. Can you send FD to this location for an evaluation, please? Mr. Sands, we're going to help you find Karen.
Okay.
We'll do what we can at the scene, provide the medical attention, get the person home, follow up with family.
Cal, are you okay?
I'm sorry I'm late.
It's important to write a citation for the violation to create a paper trail in case that the person's license needs to be suspended.
In Massachusetts, we have a immediate threat form that we file with the Registry of Motor Vehicle that suspends the license of the operator until there can be a medical screen to make sure they can safely operate a vehicle. We also have an extensive database in our in-house computer system, so in our dealings in the future, the officers on the road will be aware of the patient's condition as soon as they roll up on scene.
Okay, so again, this was a really great video. It touched on a lot of important points as far as our law enforcement interaction and assessment with someone First, I guess I want to point out the officer said the gentleman ran a red light and it was a stop sign, if you all noticed that. But additionally, after that, the officer, immediately started to see signs that the gentleman might be confused. He was going in the wrong direction based on where he was saying the address was. He was becoming repetitive. We can ask those simple questions like, what is the date? And things like that, because there might not be a concept of what the current date is. That gentleman might be able to say his name, his birth date, his address, a lot of historical information, but he might not know the current space and time. So it's important to ask those types of questions to assess where he's at and his safety level. And ultimately in this, they did notice the locator device. And even if that hadn't been present there, I think the officer would have thought that there was something going on and had concern. Like they said, it could have been a medical issue, or it could have been a dementia related issue. So I think regardless of the locator device, they probably would have been contacting a relative to come anyway, because this gentleman wouldn't have probably been able to navigate getting to his sisters safely. And then obviously we can assess if that if there's a medical need. Now, he may not have had any medical need there. His sister might have been able to verify this is, kind of normal for him. And perhaps that part of it may not have had to happen. But additionally, they covered also that writing a citation is something that, we don't necessarily want to do, but it becomes a safety issue if a person's recognition of driving laws may be deteriorating as well. We want to keep them safe as well as the other drivers on the roadways. So writing a ticket is important with that. And then in the state of Wisconsin, we have what's called a driver behavior report. And it's the same type of thing that they described as far as a document that we can fill out that describes our observations when we had contact with the person and the enforcement action that was taken as far as perhaps a citation, or if there was a crash or something like that, we can put that in there. And then it's assessed by the Department of Transportation, and then they can get in for a medical assessment to see if their driving status should be changed. So additionally, they mentioned about their computer system that they can note that the person has dementia. And we also have that within our system in Outagamie County. We can create a medical flag on a person and indicate that they have dementia and put some notes with that for future reference. So next we're going to talk about subjects who may become combative. So again, this type of situation, we've been called as officers to homes for situations like this. I was called for a gentleman in the last year or so who was living in home with his wife, and he thought at that time or in that moment that his relatives were gangsters. He didn't recognize them as his family and thought that they were gangsters and was fearful of them. So responding to that situation and taking the next steps was helpful there. I was able to go in, and he still recognized my uniform as an officer. So I went in by myself to talk to him, and I requested that everybody else step out. And I was able to de-escalate him, have some conversation about his personal background, and make him feel more comfortable and safe. And ultimately, I found that he had a good relationship with his doctor. And the situation that day was that he had been declining significantly. So they wanted to get him in for a medical checkup. So I found that he had a good relationship with his doctor. It had been his, personal care physician for a number of years. And, I told him that he had an appointment with him that day and that I would be happy to take him. And he obliged that. And I gave him a ride to the hospital. And by the time we got there, his state of mind had kind of changed back. And I was able to turn him back over to his relatives who were able to take him to the hospital. Likewise, we might get called, officers have been called to the hospital before, for instance, where perhaps a patient with dementia is now supposed to be returned to their facility. They don't want to leave. And, just using those interaction techniques to gain rapport, calm that person and get them to go. Additionally, getting called to facilities, perhaps when somebody is recently moved in and forgetting that they now live in that location, feeling like they're being held captive and become combative. And the thing that everyone needs to know, especially law enforcement, when responding to somebody who's being combative, and that combative situation is directly linked to their dementia, needs to know that, all behavior is communication, as a lot of people that study in the dementia realm know that all communication or all behavior is communication. So what is the underlying issue? What are they trying to communicate to you? Is there an underlying pain? Did they bump their head or have some pain in a foot that they're unable to express to you? Are they hungry, thirsty, hot, cold, maybe depressed or feeling isolated? A lot of people are right now. What is going on underlying, that we could figure out to possibly help this situation. In making an assessment of if perhaps there needs to be medical treatment. Is this a sudden onset of behavior, and maybe there's an underlying medical issue there. And in these cases, you want to, if you're at home or in the public, again, try to get in touch with a relative or a caregiver if there is one. Have those discussions with them to fill in the gaps that the person may not be able to. And then make sure you're asking them if they're connected to resources. I think one of the biggest oversights, perhaps in law enforcement, because, a lot of people say we're not social workers, but there's a lot of situations that we respond to that we're, the first time anybody's been called or responded, and it's us. And so we're there and we have the opportunity to perhaps see a situation that maybe nobody else has been seeing. So we have that opportunity to do an assessment and link people with resources. And we don't want to assume that just because somebody is an adult and they're living in their own home, that they are aware of the resources out there to them, or have, gotten an assessment and been in to see a doctor. So it's important for us to ask those questions, not pry into people's business, but genuinely, ask those things to try to help someone who might be in a bad situation. So in these combative type situations, we obviously just want to try to de-escalate someone and hopefully, bring them back to the point they were, before they got upset. We definitely want to try to avoid the transfer trauma of hospitalizations, and just try to get that person out of the current mindset. Next, we'll talk about hallucinations and delusions. And so we see a lot of this in our line of work, and not necessarily just with dementia, but we also see it across the board with mental health issues as well as drug abuse. So we're familiar with this quite a bit in other situations. So again, it's a really good learning opportunity for officers to understand how to handle situations where someone with dementia is experiencing hallucinations and delusions. So, when we are crisis intervention trained for mental health issues, we're, told that if somebody is hallucinating or delusional, to try to bring them back to reality and try to reassure them, but let them know what's happening isn't real, and to reassure them it's going to get better. In knowing ways to work through these situations with people with dementia, we know that we're supposed to go to people's reality, that we are supposed to move to their reality and try to help them navigate their current situation. So some of the things that we come across in situations involving hallucinations and delusions include believing somebody's in their house or outside their house that isn't there. And in a previous training event that involved some other officers, a deputy had told me about their experience in having a call to a person's house who believed that there was ghosts in the house. And the officer responded, and they did a good job of moving to their reality and, acknowledged their concern and said that they were there to help them and make sure things were safe. And they said they would go through the house and check for them. And then they additionally, said that they had a device that could remove any spirits and ghosts. And this ended up working very well with the person. And they were very happy and content with the officer's response, and felt good by the end of it. But then I asked the officer, did you see if that, because the person was living alone, I said, did you talk to that person about any family, friends, or relatives? And they had not thought to look into that a little bit deeper, because the house was in good shape. The person, was communicating with them fine. They were just having these hallucinations. Now, obviously, people are taking care of themselves, it's seemingly fine, but somebody having hallucinations or delusions isn't necessarily a normal thing. So although they may be doing fine around the house, it could be something more going on, and there could be, more of a significant decline, or there could be an underlying health issue that's causing that. So it would have been a good opportunity to reach out to somebody that knows the person and find out, is this common? Are they being treated for anything? Maybe they should go in, that sort of thing. Additionally, we could respond to like a variety of really strange situations. And a couple years ago, our agency had a couple calls involving a female that had called in. There were some officers before me that had a very similar call, but then she came to the police department one day and sat down with me and said that there was a couple that she didn't know that dropped off their small children with her and left. And this sounds really scary and strange. And she was talking about, being a bit older and had concerns about caring for these children, and wanted to make sure, was wondering about getting proper car seats and having the correct supplies, to bathe the children. But then she began to talk about things like, I want to feed them, but their mouths are sewn shut, and saying other things that really started to seem strange and made me wonder about the situation. Now, regardless, her bringing up children being dropped off at her house was going to make me ask if I could come back to her home to see them and assess the situation. And so I did that, and she brought me back to her house, and, and going through the house, and this woman was very well kept, very well spoken. And in going through her house, it was much the same. And looking around, I could tell that she had been a pretty successful career woman herself and was very active. I also noted in kind of looking around that it appeared she lived alone and had an adult daughter. And eventually she showed me the rooms where these children were. And what I found was that they were stuffed animals. And she had them set up in a couple different bedrooms, on a bed or in front of the TV and things like that. And she was very concerned about them and just wanted to make sure their situation was okay, and was concerned that their parents left them. So I said I would talk to them, and she went downstairs, and I stayed in the room for a little while initially, wondering what I was going to do. And after giving it some thought, I talked to her a little bit more, and I got her daughter's name and number from her. And I told her I had to make some calls, because we wanted to make sure that the children were safe and cared for. And I was able to call her daughter and verify that this had been something that she was aware of. She knew about the stuffed animals, and she was aware that there were some cognition and memory issues that were concerning. And she lived across the country at the time. And she had been coming back to try to get her mother into doctor's appointments. So they had begun this process of assessment, but they weren't done with it yet. And so I asked her, I was going to this woman's reality, and I asked the daughter if she thought it would be okay for me to take the stuffed animals, to indicate that I would take them, turn them over to CPS for a proper investigation, and to make sure that the children were cared for properly. And I asked her this because I was wanted to make sure it was okay with her, but I also wanted to see if she thought it would cause an issue if I took them. I didn't know if she was having these delusions about these stuffed animals because perhaps she was lonely. And, even though it was somewhat stressful to her, maybe it was somewhat comforting as well. And she thought that it would be a decent idea to try. So I went back in, spoke with the woman, said that I had contacted CPS and that we were going to take them to try to make sure that they were properly cared for, and for them to try to find the parents and make sure the parents were doing okay, and, eventually try to reunite the family. And she was okay with this. So I took them, and I had told the daughter, we'll have these stuffed animals at the police department, should you need them. And she, it was okay from there. And we didn't get any other calls from them, from that family. So I'm not entirely sure what her story was after that. But I know that she didn't have any other concerns at that point. So again, this was a good situation, where I collaborated with the family, talked to her, made sure they were linked with resources. And those are really important things to do in these situations.
Kerry, we did get one question about advice on a dementia locator bracelet or an ID bracelet. And I can share a link in the chat to one organization that I know of that some families have worked with, but do you have, and that would be Medic Alert.
Sure.
Do you have any other recommendations of anything you've seen folks use?
And actually a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to go over a couple of those. So stand by.
Awesome.
Okay. Next, we're going to go into wandering. Obviously, this is a really concerning behavior, wandering or exit seeking, especially here in Wisconsin this time of year. This isn't an issue with everyone with dementia, but if we are responding to a situation of wandering, we're going to take it like any missing person complaint. And we're going to want to know, gather as much information and be called as soon as possible once it's noticed. So we're going to want to know, is that person on foot or in a vehicle? What's the license plate of that vehicle and a good descriptor of it? Is there any, unique bumper stickers or damage to the vehicle? What were they last wearing? If there's a current photo, what is their dominant hand? Now, some of you may wonder what use that is, but it's been found that if someone exits a home on foot and they go down their driveway, in all likelihood, they're going to exit down their driveway and turn in the direction of their dominant hand. So that can kind of help in narrowing things down if you're looking immediately after they've left. Additionally, we're going to want to know if there are any health issues that person has, if they're in need of any medications, and places that they may go. And these could be current places that they frequent and are familiar with, but this could also be important historical places. Because as we know, in people with dementia, a lot of times their mindset may be back 30 years. So they may be thinking about going, to work. We had a gentleman who often thought he was still in the workforce. He had been retired and would get ready for work and then, start to leave to go to work when he did not have to. And likewise, there was a gentleman on the south side who used to wander and go back to his previous home, like his childhood home. So places like that might be places people go as well. And there have been, there was one significant actually 2 incidents involving the same person here in Appleton over the last couple of years. And it was a woman who lived with her adult son. She had shown, some signs or symptoms of dementia, but not significant. And the son was still working. And the woman often liked to go out on walks, and 99% of the time this would be fine. She'd come do her walk and come back. But there were 2 significant incidents where she wandered for a significant amount of time. The first being a couple years ago, and she had left from their residence on kind of the north side of Appleton. And she ultimately ended up being located in Larson, Wisconsin. So for those of you who may not be familiar with that, it's west of Neenah area. So it's probably more than 10 miles from here. So it was a significant distance for her. And then about a year ago, there was another incident, and while the son was at work, she had left overnight and was gone for possibly almost a day. And we ended up putting out a silver alert, and it was a successful silver alert because later in the afternoon, she was located on the southeast side of Appleton. But in talking to her, it sounded like perhaps she had maybe even ventured through Menasha while she had been gone. And this occurred in November. It was pretty cold. She only had a light jacket on. And so it was pretty impressive that she was in such good shape and good spirits when we located her. But after that incident, obviously I talked to the son, about the concern with this, and also connected them with Adult Protective Services. And ultimately, he found that he still needed to work, and that he was her only family member in the area and her only support. So they looked into a living facility, and she transitioned really well into it and really enjoyed it there. So we were very glad that she was found in both incidents, but both were very significant and concerning. So again, like I just said before I started this slide, there will be some more information on resources as related to wandering a little bit later in the presentation. Next, I'm going to talk about other calls for services that officers respond to, and those can include welfare checks. And that could be a welfare check in public due to confusion, or it could be at home. So there have been incidents, perhaps a partner of mine had responded to a gentleman who had responded to the bank and became a bit confused. And we got called there to check on him, and ultimately ended up contacting his wife and getting him home okay. Likewise, I was called to a home of a very lovely lady on the south side of Appleton on a couple different occasions. And she was in her 90s and doing amazingly well health-wise. And the first time I met her, I was called because a relative couldn't reach her by phone. Her phone seemed to be off or having the busy signal. And so I responded to her house, and what I found was she let me check her phone, and it was just simply that her router needed to be reset, and then her phone worked, and it was a simple fix. And I chatted with her briefly, and she was very pleasant, and we parted ways. Now, about a year later, I was called back to that house for the same thing. The phone wasn't working. So I thought, okay, maybe I just need to reset her router again. And when I got there, I came in friendly again. Let me check the phone, and that wasn't the problem. I couldn't get it to work. And as I walked around a little bit more and talked to her a little bit more, I was picking up on things that didn't quite add up. She had a stack of bills on her table, and none of them appeared to be open. And some of them included the company that provided her cable and internet, or cable and phone, excuse me. And so I asked her if it was okay for me to check the bills. And then, of course, they hadn't been open and paid, and she allowed me to go ahead and use the bill information to call on her behalf to the company and ask about the status of her phone. And what I found was it had simply been shut off for non-payment. I was told that all she had to do was pay the balance. There weren't any extra fees or fines. She just had to pay the remaining balance and her services could be turned back on immediately. So at this point, I asked her, hey, let's get this sent out right away so your phone can get turned back on as soon as possible. So she went to get, I told her to get her checkbook, and this took quite some time. And eventually I actually had to help her. And we found the checkbook, and I said, yep, let's get this written out right away. So that way your service can be turned back on. And she sat at the table for quite some time. And after a while, she asked if I could write it out for her. And I realized that she had forgotten how to write a check. And this is why her bill had gone unpaid. And then I saw other bills, and her services had not yet been shut off, but I was concerned about her power and things like that. So I did some more assessment with her, and she talked about being in this coma. And she didn't say she was in the hospital. She described this coma as happening in her own home, like there was this loss of time and that she had lost some weight. And that was kind of odd. And I looked at pictures of her, and it did appear that she was slimmer than in the photos. And then I did a little bit more assessing, and I said, can I look inside your fridge? And I looked in her fridge, and I found that there was a ton of food in there. There was more eggs than a family of 10 could eat. And, but I looked around, and a lot of it was expired. And I looked around the kitchen, and it really didn't look like she had been preparing many meals. So I got her permission to throw out the expired stuff. I said, oh, it looks like some of this stuff is expired. Is it okay if I toss it for you? Sure. And I went through that, and then I started to be concerned, because I know that, as people progress through dementia, a lot of times, obviously she's forgotten how to write a check here. Perhaps she's forgetting how to prepare meals. Maybe she's forgetting what the sensation of hunger feels like and what that means, because people lose those senses. They recognize that they have pain in their stomach perhaps, but they don't know that it's correlated to hunger, and they don't realize they're supposed to eat. Likewise with thirst. And being hot or cold. So they don't dress properly. They don't understand that connection. They lose that connection. And so I was really concerned. So I contacted the relative who had called saying they couldn't reach her, and kind of told them what I was seeing and of my concern. And they had been bringing her some of her food. She also didn't know where her food was coming from. She couldn't tell me. So I talked to them, and also put in another call for Adult Protective Services just to come and do an assessment with her and help her and see about getting her in to be medically checked and also assessed. So it was just one of these situations where it could have been very easily dismissed, because she was very engaging and could handle some of the lighter conversation and could tell me historical things, but her recent history or past weren't things that she could discuss at length. And obviously she was forgetting how to do things that she commonly had done. Next we'll talk about situations involving people living with dementia, where it maybe appears that they've stolen something. This can happen, and officers can get called to it because perhaps a store clerk just simply sees someone as taking an item that's not theirs, thinks that it's a theft. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody has a past, and somebody with dementia may have stolen things in their past, but also dementia can cause people to take things that aren't theirs simply because they might see an object that they recognize as being something that they have at home. And they might grab it just thinking that it's theirs and leave with it completely unintending to steal anything. So when an officer responds to these and perhaps sees that, okay, this person did this, they check their history and they don't see any situations of theft in their entire life, maybe talk to them a little bit and do an assessment again, to see where their cognition is and their memory. Talk to a relative and check on that end of things. Additionally, Officers can get called to a situation where of lewd behavior involving someone with dementia. And an example would be, let's say officers get called to a park, and the report is that there's a man in the park who's exposing himself. This is concerning, right? So what happens is the officers respond, and as it turns out, his wife is now there, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We live right across the street, and he has dementia, and he got out of the house and he had to go to the bathroom." Those filters about where and when to go to the bathroom, can sometimes be lost as well. And so it isn't an intentional act of trying to expose himself in public. It was just simply, an honest error by someone who has something going on that's beyond themselves. So again, it's important for officers to do that assessment and figure out those situations, instead of jumping to conclusions and taking enforcement action. Next, we're going to switch gears and get into those safety practices that we talked about before. As people go through the journey of dementia, there's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of different declines. And, we want to make sure that their living area is appropriately proofed, I say. And what that means and what you can do is kind of pay attention to where they're at and kind of know where they might go. And just know that obviously keeping walkways well lit and clear is super important. You want to make sure that there are good paths and it's navigable for them. Also be mindful that processing different patterns can also become difficult. So different pattern floors might cause an issue, or let's say there's a black rug in the middle of the floor. That could be perceived as an actual hole in the floor by that person and can cause issue. So there are things that we can kind of do and be mindful of to help people get around. Likewise, things that are all of one color can blend together. An example of this would be in your bathroom, for instance. Let's say you have a beautiful white tile floor, your toilet is white, and your wall is white. All of these are the same color, and all of us can see that the difference of these things. But someone with dementia may see them all together and may not be able to tell where the toilet is in that room. So what you can do is get a different colored toilet seat or toilet seat cover to kind of make that stand out, so that way they know where to go to use that item. There are other things that you can do, like leave notes. If the person can still read and understand written communication, you can leave different safety notes around the house, like leaving a note on the stove that it can be hot and to be careful not to touch it. You can do all sorts of things like that in the common areas that they go. Additionally, pictured on the right on the top here are some door alarms. And these door alarms can be purchased at your standard Home Depot or Ace Hardware, and you can use these on doors or windows. My mother-in-law had these in her house. My father-in-law wasn't really a wandering risk, but they had them as a preventative and precautionary measure, just in case he would want to go outside one day, because they knew that if he went out and started to walk around, he would likely get lost. And what happens with these alarms is that as soon as the door or window is open, it gives off a loud audible noise. So that way you're alerted of your loved one trying to exit. The picture below is a pressure sensor alarm, and those in this picture is on a bed. And you can use those also in chairs. Again, my mother-in-law had one on my father-in-law's bed and his favorite chair. And that was because he was a fall risk. And so she could still be doing things around the house while he was lying down or sitting in his chair, and feel safe knowing that she could go get her tasks done and be alerted if he were to get up. So that way she could check to make sure that he was getting around okay. So there's all different sorts of alarms like that people can get. Additionally, like we talked about earlier, if driving is becoming a concern, have those conversations. I know they're not always easy, but we want to keep everybody safe. So, sometimes it's appropriate to encourage discontinuing driving. Obviously, it seems like a no-brainer to remove and secure weapons. I know it's Wisconsin. 99% of people have guns in the house. There's a lot of hunters out there and a lot of veterans. So, you know, most people have weapons. But once somebody is to a point where maybe they're not hunting anymore, or they have no need for them, or they're getting further in their journey with dementia, you know, it's time to secure or get rid of those weapons if they no longer have a need for them. You know, you don't want there to be an accidental incident where they arm themselves, and we don't want any of that. So always a good idea to remove or secure them in a place where they can't be reached. Another good idea is to keep a file in your house for your loved one. And that can include a current photo of the person and of their vehicle. And then it can have health information in there, including medications that are needed and other helpful information that first responders might look for. The next bullet point is the program that Kate talked about, and that is the Medic Alert Alzheimer's Safe Return Program. And up on the top, there's a picture of the necklaces and bracelets that are given out in that program. And you can sign up for that program. Your loved one can wear one of those jewelry items, and should they get lost and those bracelets are noticed, then they can take the steps to make sure that person is reunited. Also, reach out to your local law enforcement agency. There's a lot of different programs and initiatives that individual police departments have that they can link you with. And the video that we're going to watch next showcases, it's a short video of a police department from out of state and an initiative that they had to help those with dementia in their community.
We want to inform the local community about the Alzheimer's Awareness Initiative.
You don't have to face this alone.
We are here to help. When you enroll in this free program, you will receive a medical bracelet with contact information. This will help expedite first responders in assisting your loved ones. Resources for the Alzheimer's Awareness Initiative can be found at the City of Prescott's website.
Help us assist first responders when handling the needs of those you love.
We're in this together.
Keeping the community safe is our goal.
Okay. And so that was just one agency's initiative. There's a lot of other ones out there. And actually, we're going to watch another short video because Oshkosh Police Department and Grand Chute Police Department both take part in Project Lifesaver. And the next video is actually going to show.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the City of Prescott Virtual Town Hall meeting for faith-based and mental health resources. I want to thank everyone who's participating by Zoom or by phone. I think.
Here we go. My mistake.
Police Department is celebrating its new initiative called the Project Lifesaver Program. It uses a tracking device and radio technology to find people who have wandered away from their homes. This includes children who may be autistic or older adults with perhaps Alzheimer's. Officials say the program has found success around the country, and the missing person is typically found within a few miles from where they were last seen.
Search times have been reduced from hours and days to minutes. The average recovery time is 30 minutes. In over 3,200 searches involving Project Lifesaver equipment, there have been no failures, no significant injuries or deaths.
The program was established through a partnership between the Oshkosh Police Department and Community Foundation.
Okay. And so obviously that's another program that those departments have. And with Project Lifesaver, if your local community has that, they said that the Oshkosh one did partner with the community fund because there is a fee that goes along with being involved in that program. But I believe in that community, the program that sponsored it will sponsor the fee for anyone who signs up for it. At the police department here, like I said, we have an in-house system where we can flag someone and note that they have dementia. I'm also, we're currently partnering and trying to work on a program for wandering as well. So that is in the works here in Appleton. Next, we're going to get into talking about abuse. And first, we're going to talk about the different types of abuse. When you see abuse of older adults, this can include financial abuse, kind of like what we talked about before, the caregiver taking advantage of that situation and having access to the person's financial card. This could also be, relatives being in a position of helping their loved one and helping themselves in ways that they shouldn't be. And then there's a lot of scams out there that we see. So there's a lot of different ways to victimize someone financially who may be living with dementia. Next, physical abuse. Obviously, any physical harm that's caused to somebody. And then next, we'll talk about neglect and self-neglect. Now, self-neglect is not a crime, but it is something that someone with dementia could be going through. Perhaps with their decline, they're starting to, decline in self-cares or maintaining their house. And not because they don't want to, but because they don't remember or don't think of it. If we see somebody that's declining in that way, it's important to step in and offer help and resources. Likewise, neglect, perhaps someone is in a position of caring for someone with dementia and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, not taking care of the day-to-day needs of managing their personal cares, managing their medications properly, taking care of the house and the bills. And a lot of times you see neglectful abuse going hand in hand with financial abuse, because perhaps it's somebody that's in that situation where they're supposed to be providing care for someone. And not only are they not caring for them, they're also taking the money that's supposed to be used for caring for that person for themselves. And you see somebody's finances dwindle and go away. So if you're seeing any of those things, be mindful and take note. Lastly, sexual abuse. This is pretty self-explanatory. If somebody's saying something strange out of the ordinary in a sexual way, or there are injuries consistent with this, obviously, that's concerning. And next, we'll talk about how and when to report abuse. So what should you do?
We did get a couple questions, Carrie. One person said, can family caregivers ask to have their loved one who has dementia placed on that list in Appleton if they are a wanderer?
That's a great question. That's part of the program that we're working on right now, is actually a sort of registry when it comes to wandering. And it's still in the works, but ultimately, even if you do have a loved one within the city of Appleton who has dementia and you simply want them flagged in our system as having that, and we can also put a little note about, the possibility of wandering, we can certainly do that and update that within our system. Does that answer the question?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
I think so, yes. Yes, she said that's excellent.
Okay.
So we had one comment from someone who said, I received a voicemail today saying if I didn't call, I was going to be arrested. Thank God my loved one no longer uses the phone or has access to our finances. So a really good example from that person of how some of those scam related calls can be frightening and dangerous. We do have one more question. Someone said, have you been successful using EM1s for inability to care?
And I guess you're talking, and I guess I want to make sure I'm clear on this question. Are you talking about like an emergency placement?
Emergency detention, yes, he said.
And so when it comes to like a chapter 51, which is more of like a mental health danger to themselves or others, typically when it comes in the realm of dementia, we try not to do that because the background of a chapter 51 is mental health based, and that the path that they want to take with that is putting someone into mental health treatment where they could benefit from treatment, counseling, medication, and do better. Obviously with someone with dementia, and especially later stages dementia, that sort of treatment isn't going to be useful or effective. So sometimes there is then the Chapter 55 protective placement, and really those are used as a last resort. We really try to keep people within their homes, try to help navigate a situation in a facility, and try to keep them where they are without having that transfer trauma of being hospitalized. But there have been very special cases where we do have to go that route just to make sure that the person and everyone around is safe.
Awesome, thank you. That's it for questions right now.
Okay. So thank you for the questions. They're great. I mean, and really, if anybody has any, please feel free to ask. So if you are seeing signs of abuse, obviously, if you're seeing something directly, you're a direct witness to abuse, call right away. Don't hesitate, call police, and depending on where they are, if they're in home, if they're in a facility, also contacting family or the facility staff to make them aware, and making an APS reports are routes that you can take to do that. Now, if it's something where, things kind of seem odd, you're not really sure if something is going on, it's kind of one of those situations where if you see something or if you feel something, say something. It's okay. We take reports every day of situations, where people are feeling like there's something going on, but they're not really sure, but it seems suspicious, right? And it could very possibly be something. Now, we respond to all types of calls across the gamut, whether it relates to dementia or otherwise in that fashion. And we will go and we'll check out the situation. And sometimes it pans out, there's a reasonable explanation and everything in that situation is actually fine. And sometimes it uncovers a serious situation, and we'd rather err on the side of caution and look into those situations. We're happy to check into that because we want people to be safe and we don't want people to be victimized. So if there's anything going on that you question, report it. And like I said, you can report, directly to your facility, to your APS, and police. And when I talk about the abuse section, I really want to touch on an important topic, and that is caregiver burnout. Caregivers are a special kind of people, and I have the utmost respect for caregivers. It's a hard job, and I saw firsthand how beautifully my mother-in-law handled caregiving, but I also saw how much she declined while doing it, because she did it so well. And I know that it's hard on people in their careers or with their own loved ones to be that caregiver. So I think it's important that everybody needs to be mindful of self-care when being a caregiver and surrounding yourself with the right support for yourself as well. And make sure that you're aware of other options out there. If you reach a point where, things are getting too difficult, it's okay to reach out for other assistance and know that there are options out there, because you need to care for yourself first to care for that person the best that you can. So just be mindful of that. Next, we'll get into resources. So, Aging and Disability Resource Center, it has it right in its title. It's a resource center, and every county has one. And they can really link you with resources in regards to care options, social groups, facilities, anything. They're really a great group, and most of them do have a dementia specialist on board. Likewise, Adult Protective Services, ADRC and APS are both through Human Services divisions with your counties. Like we talked about before, law enforcement, we are always here and willing to help in any ways that we can. And there's a lot of really amazing local day centers out there for people to engage in and stay active. I know that there are a lot of limitations right now due to COVID, but there are a lot of places currently that are still, reaching their clients and the public virtually, just like the Alzheimer's Association with this presentation, trying to make sure we're getting people engaged and still keep them learning. And at the bottom here, it talks about ombudsman. Now, up until recently, I had no idea what an ombudsman was. So that's what we're going to actually go into next, because they actually do a lot. And if you're like me, you have no idea what that word means. So ombudsman can help with a lot of concerns and problems about the following: quality of long-term care provided, facility residents' rights, personal needs allowances, physical abuse and neglect, dietary needs, financial issues, including billing, government benefits, financial exploitation, physical or chemical restraints, facility transfer and discharge issues, privacy and confidentiality, and denial of community services. So they can help answer questions like, what are some alternatives to nursing home placement? How can you pay for long-term care? When should power of attorney and guardianship be initiated? How do you go about finding the appropriate community-based services? And do residents have the right to refuse treatment? So they're a wealth of knowledge if you have questions. Next, we'll talk about an amazing local organization, St. Paul Elder Services over in Kaukauna. And they do have another campus. Throughout the COVID pandemic, St. Paul has been in my heart. I know a lot of these organizations have been working so hard to continue to care and provide the services that they do. And I've been fortunate enough to work with staff at St. Paul before. So I'm always thinking of them during this time. So in addition to the residential care that they provide, they also have day services, a life enrichment center, memory care center, and meals and ride home services. So any of these organizations that we talk about, again, check what their COVID programming is, currently. Next, Care Patrol. This is another amazing local organization that provides a free service. And you can sit down with any of their amazing staff for free, and they will help you figure out care options. And those include assisted and independent living, residential care, memory care, and in-home care. So they can help you figure out what best suits your needs or your loved one's needs. Next, the Thompson Center on Lourdes, and that's in Appleton here on Lourdes, as it says. It used to be on College Avenue, but it relocated to the southeast side of town here. And it's a senior center. They have a lot of different programs, but they also do have an Active Minds program and other activities related to memory care. Curative Connections is an organization that's up in Green Bay, and they have dementia services, day services, transportation, community and health and wellness services as well. So they're a great resource. Fox Valley Memory Project, they're located in Menasha, right on the Appleton-Menasha border, and they are a great resource for and have tons of programs to help and support those living with dementia and their caregivers and care partners. So great organization. Also, Family Caregivers Rock. They're a local agency that helps support family caregivers through community projects, events, and granting wishes. So they are there to support your family caregivers. And to the left of this screen, you'll see the keychains that they have through their organizations and several of their partners. We have some here at the police department. They were just dropped off, and I handed some out to our officers to have on hand. And these keychains can be put on your set of keys, and it indicates that you have someone at home that needs to be checked. So should you yourself have a medical emergency, first responders can see on your keychain that you have someone that you're caring for at home that needs to be checked on. So a great initiative that they have. And again, a great organization trying to help those caregivers out there. Are there any more questions at this point? I'll give it a minute to see if anything pops up.
Yes, let me just take a peek here, because we do have a couple folks have sent in just some information. I did get a message from someone, and I'm going to post it to the whole group with just some information on the Board of Aging and Long-Term Care Ombudsman program. So just a link to the website. So I'm going to post that in the chat right now for anybody who is interested in visiting that. And then it looks like someone also posted some information about Oshkosh Family Incorporated, an organization helping folks with dementia and disabilities through the SS and SSI payee program and legal guardianship. So just some information if you need those resources. If anyone is interested, I'm also going to post in the chat just a link to the Alzheimer's Association Community Resource Finder, that if you wanted to take a look for any resources or programs, facilities, home care, elder law attorney, like any of those resources, you're welcome to type in your zip code on that site and find what it is that you're looking for. If you're not local to the Fox Valley area, you can certainly use that resource. So any other questions that anyone has, we'll give you a couple minutes here to type them in. Otherwise, you certainly can unmute yourself to ask.
Yeah, we'll leave a couple of minutes for questions, and then after any questions, I'll close with a quote that I enjoy.
Awesome. So we just have a couple comments, a thank you, then someone saying Oshkosh Family Inc. is a nonprofit 501c3. And then we also got a message from Sue Coyle, who does care management services. So if anybody is looking for that type of oversight and assistance to stay in their home, Sue is another resource as well. Okay, I'll let you take it to the next one then, Carrie.
Great. So again, really thank everybody for attending today. I think, you know, we grow as a community and as a state and as a nation by learning more about those living with dementia. And, you know, it's really important, I think, to become dementia friendly all around. So I want to leave you with this thought, and it's kind of one of the favorite things that I've come across. So they may forget what you said, but they will not forget the way you made them feel. And I find this so incredibly true in dealing with people with dementia. They may very quickly forget what specifically happened while you were in their presence, but they're going to remember what they're feeling inside, and hopefully that's happiness. So an example of this is, you know, when we would visit my father-in-law, I know that he didn't recognize us, and I know that he wasn't going to remember the content of our visit, but I know that my daughter snuggling with him and helping him with his dinner and laughing with him made him feel that joy and happiness inside. And I know that those feelings stayed with him after we left. He may forget that we were there all together, but it made that happiness remain. And I think that's really incredibly important for all of us to remember when dealing with people with dementia. So thank you again for having me today.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for being with us. We're getting some comments in here just thanking you. Great presentation. And I hope that this presentation serves as a reminder to everybody that law enforcement can be part of our team. And so I know there's a lot of people who have hesitancy to contact law enforcement if they're having difficulty with a lot of these issues. And we hear from caregivers who are so hesitant to make that call or to get their law enforcement involved. And so I hope that this serves as a reminder that there are wonderful officers like Carrie who are here to be a part of that team and to connect you with resources. And, you know, they have a great pulse on what's available in their community. So I so appreciate, Carrie, both your knowledge as well as your empathy for people on this journey and your willingness to help. Just so everyone does know, quick note, I saved the chat because folks are starting to share a lot of different resources in the chat. So before everyone started entering in the thank yous and all that, I did save the chat, and I will send that out when I send out the recording. So I'll remove the questions. If you're someone who asked a question, I will remove that because obviously we recorded the question, but just the resources piece I will save. I do see one question that came in asking if the Oshkosh Police Department has someone like Carrie. We probably all wish we could clone her in every department, right? But the Oshkosh Police Department does have, and his name is escaping me, Carrie, I'm sure you probably know who it is, that works on Project Lifesaver.
Yes, and it's
I can tell by her face.
well. Yes, correct.
Yes. So give them
that sergeant's name.
Yes, I know. But yes, they do have a wonderful officer who is involved in their dementia-friendly coalition in that community as well. So certainly reach out to them and they'll be able to connect you if you have questions or need resources in Oshkosh. Someone said Todd. Yes, Todd works with Project Lifesaver. So if that's someone you'd like to, yeah, a few more comments coming in for Todd. So again, thank you to everyone who attended. I will send you the recording and the chat resources that were saved. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Take care.
See you later.